So I'm Sam Gudger. I'm the president of the Historical Society here in Exeter. We have several members also that are helping us today, and we want to welcome you to our first event of 2026, and really our first event ever. We decided to do these Cabin Fever series to offer a chance for people to get out and mingle with neighbors and people they haven't met before and learn some interesting historical facts about Maine and Exeter. The Exeter Raceway is a topic that we have had very little information on. So this whole event has really helped us grow that knowledge and has allowed us to build on top of that for our display and just, sorry, lost for words. But it's really helped us grow that collection. And so here at the Exeter Historical Society, we believe it's important to engage with our community, and we're excited to be hosting these community events. Today will partially be recorded because I guess, I think we can all agree that documenting history is something that keeps it alive. So we hope that you enjoy what we've put together today. We did this in less than a month, and we're really impressed with the turnout. So there'll be a presentation from Paige from Maine Speedways. Her love for racing runs deep, and it's something that she shares with many family members and friends. She started racing before she even had a license. She raced four-cylinder pro stocks and mini cups, and she even won a championship in 2013. One of her family members bought Wiscasset Speedway in 2012 and brought it back to life. When she was watching that all come back, she thought, how many racetracks in Maine have never gotten a second chance? So that's when she founded Maine's Lost Speedways, and her journey of being a racing historian began. She raises awareness to the lost tracks across the state by documenting and preserving their history to share with us on her Facebook page and during events like today. Her love and passion for this topic is obvious, and I know she would absolutely love to hear any stories that you have today.
So don't be shy.
Don't be shy.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure working with Paige to make this happen today. It's now time to learn about Exeter Raceway. So let's give Paige Woods from Maine Lost Speedways a warm welcome.
Thank you, everyone. As Sam said, I started this thing, a long time ago now, over 10 years, and it's because of a lot of people like you in the room that I'm able to get the information and the stories and pictures that I do, and I really rely on people like you, and I really appreciate all of you being here. So we're going to talk about history with Exeter Raceway. So Exeter operated from 1950 until 1963. So Exeter wasn't always a stock car racing track. It was originally a fairgrounds. The West Penobscot Agricultural Society purchased 18.5 acres in 1867 and developed the property into a fairground. They constructed a half-mile track. They built halls, barns, grandstands, and a bandstand during the 58 years of owning the fairground. In 1925, the Penobscot and Piscataquis Fair Association was formed, and they ran the fair sporadically until 1939. The new Exeter Fair Association was formed in 1945 and hosted fairs from 1946 until 1950. Sam, what is happening? There we go. So how racing came to be at fairgrounds. So much like the video had mentioned, there was many different forms of events such as auto racing, and that started at Old Orchard Beach in the early 1900s. These attractions were plagued by the inability to attain funds from attendees, and there was just hundreds of thousands of people that would attend these events, and the crowd control was a major issue. So in an effort to alleviate this, the town tried covering the backs of the viewing stands, and that still didn't work, unfortunately. And even with those efforts, it became overwhelming for the town and promoters, and unfortunately caused events like this to only last a few short years. So as I mentioned, the crowd control situation made facilities realize the importance of ticket booths for paying customers, And that is when auto racing started switching to more contained events in arenas such as horse tracks. Because there was just, like I said, there was just so many people bombarding those events that they couldn't get everyone to pay. There was just so many people. So 1950, stock car racing at the Exeter Fairgrounds. So little backstory, fairgrounds often closed historically due to dwindling crowds. And that caused unsustainable financial burdens, and alternative entertainment options grew more popular, much like today. History really does repeat itself. Another major factor was the loss of horse racing revenue, as interest in horse racing was on a rapid decline. And since the invention of the automobile was becoming more popular, we kind of switched to car racing. The unfortunate closures of fairgrounds really made the perfect hotbed for auto racing, and the old Exeter Fairgrounds was a perfect example of this. So the ones who had their hand in operating Exeter Raceway, there was a few different people. So during the 13 years that Exeter Raceway was opened, there was several owners and operators, including Lester and Mildred Wyman, Dick, Goudreau? Ken Buzzell, Shirley Brooks, the Wiggins family, the Bean family, Clayton Lancaster, and Don Thurlow, to name a few, and I will go into more detail with them. The Wymans admitted that they could never make a go of it. Mildred Wyman said that they made more money selling hot dogs than they did on admission and pit fees, which you could probably believe it because the hot dogs were delicious here. Lester was actually paying $10 tow money for anyone who showed up to race, and some people would just bring their cars into the pit and they would just go for the money and never race. Shirley Brooks, who is probably the most well-known name at Exeter Raceway, owned the property for a long time. Shirley was one that changed the track from a half mile to a third mile. Am I right? Thank you. What's interesting about Exeter is that drivers found turn 4 pretty difficult and challenging. It often caused accidents and resulting in rollovers. This was exciting for fans, but not so fun for the drivers. Due to the fairgrounds dirt layout across the state, spectators could only see a cloud of dust. So here's the layout of the track now. Pits were on the infield, much like they were back in the day of early auto racing. And you can see where the announcer's booth was, backstretch, and then the line here is where the original half-mile track was. And actually what's really cool is that the same entrance to the racetrack is actually still there today. And this is the track now. As everyone knows, Jim Crane owns the property, and he really honors the history, and which is really wonderful, and he maintains the property very well. So tickets and payouts and rules. So in 1950, the price of admission was $1 with tax, and children under 12 were free. Exeter paid the top 8 drivers in cash in each division. Payouts back in those days were pretty slim, but drivers would recoup their investment for gas, tires, and haul their cars back home satisfied. Back then, drivers cared more about winning than they did the money, and Mildred Wyman remembers that the rules for the cars were pretty relaxed back in those days. So Exeter track is shortened. So around 1958, I hear 1959, Exeter was shortened to a third-mile track from a half-mile. Shirley was hoping that the shorter distance would just slow the cars down, that I'm told, and I haven't seen many articles on this, but I heard that a car went through the horse barns, and luckily no horses were injured because there was no horses in there, but that happened, and there was an unfortunate event where someone had passed, and that's when they needed to shorten the track and make the cars go slower, because at fairgrounds really across the state they had to do that because they were just going way too fast on the half-mile track. So as my good friend Dave Boss Hogg St. Clair frequently says, racing is show business, and you have to put on a show for the fans to keep them coming back. And although, like I just said, it's unproven, that a car just went through the horse stables, which I now know is true after talking to Stuart. Dirt track racing is a lot different than asphalt, and what's interesting about dirt track racing is that the track surface changes throughout the program. It can form holes, become ripply from the heat from the tires, and dirt track conditions are just completely unpredictable. To manage dust, they actually wouldn't use bunker seat oil like I had in here, but they would use regular motor oil, and they would go to area businesses and just collect the leftover motor oil, which this man over here would do, Stuart, and that's how they would make the track hopefully less dusty. As you can see in this ad here, it says well oiled. So as you can imagine, the drivers came in extremely dirty and dusty. Mr. Stone, who was the water truck driver on and off, filled the truck from the nearby Allen Stream in order to water down the track in between races. And I also learned that they would water on Sundays as well. So what did racing look like back in the 50s and 60s at Exeter? So racing looked much different back then as it does now, obviously. Cars were rougher with very little safety, and drivers oftentimes just wore t-shirts, jeans, coveralls, and a football helmet while racing. And this is actually a perfect example. This gentleman here is just wearing coveralls. So no fire suits, and if you had a fire, yikes. So safety. So cars were widely known to be a bit more chopped up in the Central Maine area than Southern Maine race cars such as Beech Ridge. But one thing that stayed pretty consistent at other surrounding racetracks, including Exeter, is that the flagman was on track level, like we saw in that video. If you guys didn't notice, like, you would have to jump out of the way not to get run over. It's really amazing that there wasn't more casualties. So he would stand on the inside edge of the track flagging, and there was just no flag stands back then. And I had an interview before this event, and the man said that the flags would just be in the dirt right next to the flagman. There was no like little holes like they have now to put flags in. So roll cages, belts, and gas tanks. In the beginning, racers would use rope as belts. They would literally tie themselves into their cars. Some drivers had lap belts, while others retrieved decommissioned harnesses from airplanes. Later on in the evolution of racing, obviously, the shoulder harnesses became more mandatory for safety. So some drivers had decent roll cages, while most didn't. The overall construction of the roll cages weren't great. Roll cages ranged from roll bars just behind their heads and 3-door roll bars to full interior roll cage, protecting the entire roof from collapsing. And you have to remember, back in these times, there was just limited resources. And most cars were just built from junkyards and old scrap, and it wasn't uncommon to use black iron water pipe, and you see a car that had pipe tees and water faucets in the roll cages. I have a picture. So quick story, Haggie Pratt Sr. had a basic roll cage in his car, and he rolled his car over at Exeter, and it crushed the roof of the car, but the roll bar withstood the impact, saving him from getting crushed because it was right behind his head. So gas cans, this is hilarious. So we're typically 5-gallon military cans known as jerry cans. They were mounted right behind the driver's seat, and a 3x2 foot sheet metal was mounted between the seat and the gas can. So that's pretty interesting. So reverse rims and double centers. Drivers cut the center of the wheel, and they turned the wheel around for more offset and welded it back in. If this wheel was on the right front, it would just get 2 centers welded in. Also know that the double center, this would strengthen the rim to keep it from breaking under extreme pressure going into the corners. And drivers would do this on all 4 wheels. It gave the car a wider stance for better handling. In the second photo here, you can see a reverse rim on the driver's side. So, here. You don't see that nowadays, guys. So, back in the early days of racing, race cars had very poor steering and brakes. These cars were not easy to drive because of their poor handling. Limited tire options and unknown track conditions has often resulted in common crashes and rollovers. I don't know why I keep doing that, Sam, sorry. Haul them in and hauling them out. So race cars often hauled and unloaded from farm trucks or logging trucks on the front stretch. There was an unloading ramp on the infield pictured below here. You can see a truck unloading a car there, and sometimes racers would use old school buses by cutting part of the roof off and hauling them to the unloading ramp at the track. It wasn't unusual to see a race car being hauled on a tow bar behind the family's daily driver on a weekend headed to the races. So types of cars that raced at Exeter. So there was 2 different divisions. Later in Exeter's history, there was actually a 3rd division, but it was just pretty sporadic. But the main divisions were stock division and bomber division. So a little bit about those. The stock division, this allowed changes to the body, the chassis, and the engines and running gear. This class had much faster speeds than the bomber division. So the bomber division, known as like the jalopies, this was more of a street stock division that allowed body alterations, and drivers would cut pieces of the body off of the car to lighten the car, and they did not put them on lower chassis. So junkyards and ingenuity. So back then, drivers were just able to go to the junkyard and source parts for their race cars, and they really just used what they had in their backyard. Drivers more often than not, were the builders and the mechanic of their cars. They weren't rich, but instead they developed just ways to use what they had. So for instance, Dave Darvo, he made his own seat and he turned it slightly to the left in his race car when racing at Exeter. That way that he could turn his head while he was racing to see who was behind him coming into the corners. So some heavy hitter drivers and what they raced for race cars. So you have the Thayer family, was a pretty big name at Exeter. So you have Bernie Thayer, Alvin Thayer, Nelson Jr. Thayer. The Thayer family ran Fords and Plymouths, and here's a few photos of them at Exeter. So Sonny Ellis, he was a heavy hitter everywhere that he went. So Sonny drove a 1939 Chevy. So Sonny was unbeatable at Exeter, so Shirley would actually go down to Unity and find the top driver there to give Sonny a challenge. And Shirley got Dave Darvo, Blackie Hillard, and a few others to challenge him. I don't know if they won or not, but I'd like to know. Oh, yeah. So Bun Emery. Bun was a prominent driver in his early years of racing, and he actually raced at various tracks out of state as well. And this is a great photo of his car. And this was by turn 3 and 4, and in the background there is the old horse stables. And that's a photo of him. And you can see his helmet, just a regular old helmet, not full faced or, oh my goodness. Yeah. So Harold Pappy Wilcox, in 1955, Harold raced at Exeter in Unity for 3 consecutive years. He was the track champion once and the runner-up twice. So starting in 1961, he was Maine's first Grand National Circuit driver, aka NASCAR. And this 164 car was a pace car for Exeter, and to this day, his name is widely known to the locals on and off the track. So the Wyman family is also a prominent name as well. So back in the early days of racing, it was a common practice that driver Lester Wyman would take the engine out of his dump truck on a Friday and put it in his 1934 Ford for a race. And then he would spend all day on Sunday putting the engine back in his dump truck so that he could go to work. And that happened a lot, and it sometimes happened out in the parking lot at Unity. So Willard Henderson raced pickups. In 1958 was a super hot year for him. He had quite a lot of top 3 finishes, and not to mention some of these, so the picture of this trailer here was just made out of like scraps essentially, and they would just haul it to the racetrack. So Dana Graves, unfortunately, Dana passed a few weeks ago, and he was a heavy hitter at Exeter and a really great friend of mine. Dana Graves won his first championship at Exeter in 1962 in a 1937 Ford Coupe, and if you passed Dana, you certainly earned it. So just some more local names that I would love to learn more about from any of you if you guys know, but Exeter area drivers that deserve honorable mention, the Willett family, Eaton family, Gould family, Bagley, Buddy Smith, Noyes family, Ray Bouchelder, Norm Wyman, and Stan Tini. So mystery driver. So Exeter Raceway would put out a newspaper ad saying mystery driver for that week, and this is where the track operator would choose someone to be a mystery driver for that week's race, and then when the mystery driver would reveal themselves if they got beat by another driver, and I heard that it was Harold Wilcox that was a mystery driver a lot of the time. And he would literally show up at the racetrack in like an unmarked car. Like it sometimes had a question mark on it, and he would like wear a mask over his face, hoodie, couldn't see who it was. So stories from Exeter Raceway, like I just said, Harold Wilcox showed up to Exeter, concealed his identity by putting a mask over his face, racing an unfamiliar race car. And another interesting story is that there was someone who went by the name Hayseed Smith, and he was stationed at Dow Air Force Base, and for some reason, likely related to being in the military service, he was not supposed to be racing, so we made up that name so that he could hit the track. I don't know who it is, but I want to know that secret. So here's some photos from Exeter. And then, as you can see, that car was the one that Harold Wilcox drove right here, the colored photo. And then my friend Charlie over here told me that that car actually, because it was a race car, and then they turned it back to a regular street car. So the risks. Exeter saw its fair share of crashes, injuries, and near misses, but for some drivers, they weren't so lucky. Early cars had very few real safety measures. So Robert Red Scott of Newport sustained a really nasty neck injury in his 1940 race car, hit a bank, rolled over. Red climbed out of the car and he just immediately sank to the ground. He survived his injuries. Leonard Kendall unfortunately lost his life from a serious head injury when his tire blew in a race and rolled over. He passed in the hospital, and that was the first serious accident in 3 years at the racetrack, and that is why Exeter Raceway got shortened, I am told, because of that accident. So thrill shows, go-kart racing, music, and more. So Exeter would hold thrill shows featuring Harold Wilcox. The thrill show would include ramp jumps and rollover contests. There was also go-kart races that used part of the infield as well. And occasionally they would have truck pulling on the front stretch to draw in a crowd. So many spectators recall seeing musicians such as Curly O'Brien and Shorty Thomas playing in between races in the tower that was located on the infield, which is back there. So they would play in that tower right there. So the demise of Exeter Raceway. So over the years, I've just been told that Exeter wasn't surviving because Speedway 95 was built in 1967, and Exeter closed before that. So timeline isn't quite adding up, but so the last two who tried to save Exeter Raceway, so Clayton Lancaster and Don Thurlow leased the track from Shirley Brooks with the intention of running it. And unfortunately, due to the unsafe grandstands, this prevented that from happening. they actually discussed to close off the grandstands and have racing anyway, but that just didn't pan out. That was ridiculous. So in the end, it just wasn't a reasonable solution, and they chose not to move forward with racing. And it wasn't just the unsafe grandstands, but the frequent fights in the pits. I've heard drinking were another leading cause of the track's closure. And I heard a story today that someone showed up to the track when Clayton and Don Thurlow were there just working their tails off, and they just looked so exhausted, and they had just been working so hard, and it just was not coming together. But they tried to make a go of it. So Exeter ran on and off during the 13 years that it was in operation. Track officials were not consistent with reporting results to the local newspaper. So there's very few articles with results from the races out there. So in the final season of racing at Exeter Raceway, car counts were dwindling, and so they ended up only racing one class. So after cars were done racing at Exeter, snowmobiles raced there for a brief time, and I believe it was around like the 70s, 71. Am I right, Stuart?
I wasn't on.
Okay. I think I read an article about that. So here's some results anyway that I do have that I've scrounged up. So you have heavy hitters here. You have Harold Wilcox, and then you have Mike Clough, which is really interesting because he ran Ellsworth Speedway at one point. I think he even owned it.
Yeah.
Yep. And you have Willard Henderson here, Bernie Thayer, and just a few others. Keith Davis from Winterport was another heavy hitter. Who else? Oh, Bun Emery. Yeah. Okay, so this is Dave Darvo here at Unity, but once Exeter Raceway shut its doors, drivers migrated to Unity Raceway that was owned by Ed Knowles and run by Bob Knowles. So a new life for Exeter Raceway. So as many of you know, Jim Crane now owns the property where Exeter Raceway once stood. He built a house, an airplane hangar, and another smaller house on the property. And the tower that was used for horse racing, but I learned today that they actually did use it for car racing, for scoring, I was told.
The one in the center?
Yeah, no, the one that had the windows in it.
That was the secretary's office.
Secretary's office, thank you. I'm still learning. So that building remained on the property for a long time. I heard someone lived in it at one point as well. And so anyway, Jim Crane was trying to relocate that building on the property, and unfortunately it just crumbled because it was just so old. But thanks to Jim Crane, the property is well maintained, and so is its racing history. And it's really nice because Jim Crane in his airplane hangar has old pictures of racing at the fairgrounds and at the car racing track, so he really appreciates the history behind it. So racing reunions at Exeter Raceway. The first one was in 2017, and the other one that we had was in 2024 that I helped Ron and Tom Clark organize. And it was just a really fun day because we all sat at tables and we just went around the tables just mentioning, what Exeter Raceway means to us. And it was really neat because a lot of drivers that are still around attended, and if a driver had passed, their family came and represented them as well. So it was really wonderful. It was a great time. I hope we can do it again. So the Terraplane, this is a mystery. So this 1935 Hudson Terraplane race car was upside down in Lyle Cookson's junkyard in Guilford. In 2010, Neil Martin rescued the car with the help of Rosie and Eddie Moore and Russ Nutting to restore it. And the car was restored, and it's currently owned by Jesse Michaud of Caribou. It's a mystery who drove this car, but many people remember this car racing at Exeter in 1957, but we just don't know who raced it. So if you have any idea, talk to me after.
Any old pictures of that from racing?
No.
No.
None. I know. So that's the only picture, pretty much the only pictures of it. We don't have any pictures of it on the track at all. Okay, so this is a lap around Exeter Raceway 61 years later. and this is the terraplane that was at the reunion, which is pretty neat because Jim Crane is actually driving it on his property. Yeah, it was a blast, wasn't it? And it just felt like that car was back home, essentially. It was neat. And Jesse, he wasn't able to attend the reunion because he had a drag race that day, but he hauled the car down for us anyway, and it was really neat.
You sure Max Drummond didn't own that car? He was from Guilford.
I never even heard his name, I don't think. Really?
I know
Okay.
the family well.
Really? Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
I gotta write that down. Yeah, the car's coming back. It's kind of blurry. I don't know why that is. Yep, the car's on the old racetrack, pretty neat. So, drone footage of the old Exeter Raceway, just so you can see what the property currently looks like. So that's the smaller house that's on the property. I won't bore you too much with the, and then you can see, it looks like there's nothing left on the property, but if you walk it, you can literally feel the racetrack under your feet, truly. And Ron and Tom Clark and I walked it in the spring of 24, and it was really cold and windy, but boy, you could tell where it was. Want to go swimming? No. So, some surviving Exeter race cars. John O'Connor owns Larry Morse's number 66. It's the same body as Larry Morse's, but on a different chassis, I am told. Did I get that right, Haggie? Okay, I think so too. I don't know. So Jim Crane, he owns an original Exeter Raceway car that was gifted to him by the Clarks at the 2017 Exeter reunion. This was taken from behind Bob Gould's property. Am I right about that?
We were gifted with.
Yes.
Yes, so
4.5.
so this was behind Bob's property, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
So Ron and Tom Clark now owned Nelson Junior Thayer's number 109 that raced at Exeter, and then this is a photo of it actually at the reunion, which was pretty neat. And then here's a photo of it back in the day. So Exeter Raceway's remains may be gone, but for the Exeter community, let's remember the golden era of racing that shaped Exeter's Raceway's history forever. The history is deep, so let's carry on the stories for generations to come. That way Exeter Raceway can be remembered and cherished forever, like it and the drivers in its community deserves. If you have any questions, or if you would like to share a story, or if you attended Exeter Raceway, I would love to hear anything that you have now.
I would like to give some pictures to the Historical Society here in Exeter of the original pictures you saw there.
Thank you.
And just so you know, some of the older people here, not in South way back in days, there was outdoor toilets.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of them, lots and lots of them. And the grandstand was a major upkeep all the time.
Yes.
Sweeping it because it was a dirt track, it was wet. I mean, it was dusty. And if you went to go home, your car was going to be covered in probably that much dust. And that meant the grandstands was. And there was 4 grandstands. There was one great big one, and then 3 smaller ones. As a kid, the husband she was talking about, I remember when that happened, because I was lining up cars when I was 16. And my job during the week was working on the track. We had to put mounds in because the state kept changing the rules about dirt tracks, what you had to do for safety measures. You had to build a fence to catch tires. And the big thing was insurance. It was Lloyd's of London. It was $200 a week, rain or shine. So if you had 15 races scheduled, that was $3,000. And if you didn't race one of them, it was still $3,000. And in the late 1960s, early 1960s, that was a ton of money. And when they said it didn't pay much money, you're right, they didn't. I was telling her the one interesting fact was, in front of the grandstand, you can sit there and you can square your tires. Now, they're rayon tires, but the tires are actually square. If it rained, 5 minutes, you couldn't get off the track. It was just like, it was very slippery. So, and she said things changed and what's happened. But the big thing was, we went from 6-cylinder cars in the early 50s to in the 60s. Now you had V8s. You had Oldsmobile V8s. And they was getting really fast. And we had guys go over the number 1 and turn the banking on 1 and 2 and go out over and in the air. 50 feet, it seemed like at the time.
Yeah.
Probably was 10. But they crashed. And pipe, there was no piping back then. I mean, water pipe, that was good. The only thing they did have back then mostly was the good wide seat belts out of fighter jets. Or fighter planes.
Yep.
I don't know if they have jets.
Yeah.
But most everybody had them. And Dave Darbo and Dr. Hay had come up. They used to race in Unity. And Dad did talk to them. But they had coupes that had been cut, narrowed up. And they sat in the middle of the car. And I had forgot all about Dave Darbo's seat when she talked about that. I remember, because I lined him up that year, 62, and he said, I said, why'd you do that? He said, I can see somebody going by me, where I'm at. But they was narrow, well, the bodies was narrowed on a frame, widened wheels, but they run Hudson Hornet engines and twin carburetors, what they call the twin edge power, which is the same car that won Daytona way back then. So them guys from Unity really knew what they was doing. I mean, they had most everybody in Exeter outclassed. Sonny Elsa's car was number 5.
Yep.
Harold Wilcox's car was number 2. They was both owned by Chunk Tozier, Walter Tozier, Skadusky, and they won a lot. And they kept making them go down to 2 different times. They had to take them down to American Gate, have the motor disassembled to see what they had for racing packs. And I happened to know the guy. I didn't at the time, but I talked to the guy after, and they substitute camshafts. They put full race cams in them cars, and then them was 6-cylinder Chevys was fast. But that, but they sent him down there to give him tore down, and Chunk would beat somebody down there, and he'd pay the guy to make sure they changed out the camshaft. There might have been a few slippery people back in the days, but both of them cars were owned by Chunk Tozier. But anyway, I'd like to present them to you. These are original pictures.
Thank you very much.
And
Those are from 1951.
yeah, them was before me, because I only came in the late, and my father and Jim Griffin actually bought the track from the association.
Yes,
So Jim
the
Griffin,
fairgrounds,
yep. And then a couple years, then Jim knew how much money was in it, so he decided to do something different, because there was no money in it.
Yep.
Just a lot of work.
Yep, no money. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, stories? Raise your hand if you actually went to a race at Exeter. I want to know. Okay, nice. Yeah. Nice.
Every week.
Do you have a story?
Ask Gary Smith and David St. Clair about junkyard races.
Okay, I will. I call David almost every day. Wonderful. Well, thank you guys for having me, and it was a
I got a little story.
Yes.
So my name's Mark Huber. My father actually won this at Exeter Raceway in 1961. He got out of the military. He was married to Pauline Stevens, which my grandfather Clifford and Beatrice Stevens were from Exeter in the Dexter area. They got up, my sister and my mother, and it was before I was born, they were in the military at Fort Hood, Texas. And he came back in 1960, and they came back to Dexter, because at that time, my grandparents were living on Free Street in Dexter. So, so he came back, worked on, was doing some mechanical work on some of the raceways with, he said, Pooler and Wyman for the car owners. Not engraved, but there was just a piece on the front and then went up and down like, you know, like a gold piece on the inserted inside there. I lost that, but I kept the main part of the trophy in, but as you can see, it's a little loose. Seen some years, so. So I'd like to donate this to the Exeter Historical Society.
I'm Ron Clark. There's a bunch of pictures floating around that
taken with this. And it's neat, they're floating around and they'll last out there a lot longer than I tried to keep them, because they're for everybody. And getting out in the pit was an exercise. We learned a lot out there. And it ain't no race car.
Anyone else? Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Dean Stone, I used to go to the races every Sunday with my father.
Nice. And what did your father do at Exeter?
He was a dairy farmer.
Okay.
So the sad part was, we go to the races, come time for the feature race, if everything went well, we could watch it. It didn't go well, we had to go milk cows.
Okay.
So kind of happened a lot. So
And what was your dad's job at the track?
he did it occasionally. He run the water truck.
Okay.
So
And where would he get the water out of?
I think it's called the old Peabody Road.
Okay.
There's a little pond there.
Okay.
They go over there and fill up. The brook right there by the racetrack didn't have a deep hole, so they couldn't get water there very often. So they'd have to go around the other way.
Okay. So they didn't get it from Allen Stream.
They did if they had a...
They come in from the Atkins
Yeah.
Road
Very,
on the
yeah.
other end.
Okay. Okay.
If it was wet enough, there was a pool there by the racetrack. It seemed though it was always dry. It was
Okay.
Summertime.
Okay.
So
Yep.
he drove it occasionally.
Okay.
Like I was telling Haggie one time, the truck quit after we filled it up. And I think we almost walked back through the woods and the fields. I'm not positive.
Okay.
There's no radios
Right.
back
Wow. Wow. So you were around 4 or 5
Yeah.
when you went. What do you remember?
My next memory is, I think it was a mile track back then, I'm not positive.
Okay.
And on the back stretch, or 3 and 4 corners, because it was always dusty, if a car went off the road, you had no idea who it was because it's too far
Yeah.
away
Yep.
until they pulled it out,
Wow.
you know.
Yep.
And that happened quite often.
Yep. So did they oil the track, do you know?
Yes, yes.
With bunker seat oil. Do you know?
All I know is I was told they went around to all the garages,
Yes.
picked up their old oil.
Yep.
If that's what that is.
Yep, that's what that is.
Okay,
Yep.
yep,
Yep.
yes.
Yep.
Yes, they did that.
Yep. Okay, that was pretty common back in that time. So that confirms that. Okay.
And the horse stables was still there
Okay, and
in them days.
Okay.
After turn 4,
okay.
come down the grandstand.
Okay.
And you weren't allowed up there because they were ready to fall in and stuff.
The horse stables.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can remember people going up there and getting on the roofs. And they'd have to stop the races. Constables would have to go up and tell them to get down.
Okay.
Because they was just getting a better view. That's what it was. They weren't safe to be in.
Okay.
So
Okay. Because there was a story that I don't know how accurate it is, but that a car went through the horse stables, and then that's why that
Yeah.
they had to shorten the track. But I haven't seen any articles about it. But
I remember hearing that, yes.
oh wow.
Because there weren't much of a banks back then around the whole track.
Right.
To
Okay.
keep people in, it was just, whatever.
Flat. Okay. Okay. So the track was pretty dusty.
Yep.
So spectators really couldn't see too much.
Not on the backstretch, no.
Backstretch. Okay. What else do you remember?
Just being a kid, you get in free.
Right, under 12. Yeah.
So, when my father would let us run around, we'd go around all 3 bleachers, grandstands, and pick up bottles.
Okay.
You get a penny apiece.
Yep.
So you could sit there all afternoon if you wanted to and have all hot dogs
Yeah.
and candies and popcorn you wanted.
Yeah.
Because the people give you the bottles.
Yep. So, Exeter Raceway's remains may be gone, but for the Exeter community, let's remember the golden era of racing that shaped Exeter's Raceway's history forever. The history is deep, so let's carry on the stories for generations to come. That way, Exeter Raceway can be remembered and cherished forever, like it and the drivers in its community deserves.